time domain response from the pole zero plot. Let us first of all understand what is a title all about. Okay, the title says that we can understand the time domain response by looking at the pole zero plot. So from the location of poles and zeros that we plot in the S-plane, we can understand what could be the characteristics of the time domain response of the network. So for that, let us look at the various cases of poles and zeros, and then let us analyze these cases with its time domain response. For this, let us first understand what is the role of poles and what is the role of zeros in the network. Poles mainly decide the nature of the response, okay, while the zeros decide the magnitude of each of the response. So zeros basically govern the magnitude, whereas the entire nature of the output is decided by the poles of the system. Let us look at the first case. The first case is when the poles are real and negative. So here is an example of a pole which is situated on the left half of the S-plane. The pole has a negative value. So as seen, this is the transfer function of the system, and the pole has a value S is equal to minus A. This is the value of the pole. So the pole is situated in the left half of the S-plane. Okay, and this is the corresponding transfer function. When we find the inverse Laplace transform of this function, the inverse Laplace transform has a form e raised to minus at. And if we plot when we plot the time domain response of the given transfer function, we observe that the time domain response is a curve which is exponentially decreasing with respect to time. It clearly indicates that the pole on the left half of the S-plane results into a system which is having a response of finite magnitude, which is exponentially decreasing with respect to time, giving us a stable output. Therefore, the pole on the left half of the S-plane always gives us a stable nature of output, because here the magnitude remains finite. As time tends to infinity, the magnitude is always finite. If such is the output, we say the output is of stable nature. Hence, whenever the poles lie on the left half of the S-plane, it results into an output which is stable in nature. Thus, a real negative pole always produces exponentially decaying time response, and it also satisfies the principle that when the poles are on the left half of the S-plane, it results into a stable system. Now consider the same case when there are two poles on the left half of the S-plane. One pole is located at -2, which has a transfer function 1 upon s plus 2, and there is another pole at -5 that corresponds to a transfer function 1 upon s plus 5. So from the transfer function, we know how do we derive the poles. We equate the denominator to 0 to get the poles of the system. So the pole of this system is s is equal to -2, which is this, and the pole of this particular system is s plus 5 is equal to 0, which corresponds to this pole. So when there are two poles on the left half of the S-plane, definitely poles on the left half of the S-plane results into a stable system. Then what is the effect of these poles? One pole is closer to the j omega axis, and one pole is away from the j omega axis. As the poles move away, what is the effect on the time domain response is of concern to us. So let us plot each of the time domain response. So f1t corresponds to the time domain response of the first transfer function. f2t is the inverse Laplace transform of the second function. So the first function has a response e raised to -2t, and the other has e raised to -5t. Plotting each of one, we see that f12, this curve corresponds to f1t, whereas this curve corresponds to f2t. So what we understand is that the pole closer to the j omega axis has a nature of curve as shown here, whereas the pole away from the j omega axis having a higher magnitude of the pole is decaying more faster than the first, right? Is decaying at a much faster because there is a larger sigma I value involved there, right? So larger sigma value is nothing but corresponding to higher attenuation of the signal. Therefore, the pole closer to the j omega axis decreases at a slower rate, but the pole corresponding to a higher value decays at a much faster rate. So generalizing this particular case, we may say that it can be seen from the pole zero plot and from the time domain response that as the poles move away from the origin on the real axis in the left half of the S-plane, the corresponding time response decays at a faster rate, and that's what is the thing. As we see, as the pole move away, it decreases. The response, time domain response decreases at a faster rate. So if such is the curve, right, we can draw a pole which is far away in the j omega from the j omega axis. Moving to the next case, if the poles are real and negative but repetitive in nature. The poles are negative. The moment the poles are negative, they lie on the left half of the S-plane. The poles are repetitive in nature, so there are two poles at the same point in the left half of the S-plane. So such is the transfer function that describes the nature of the pole. The pole is real, the pole is negative, and whereas it is repetitive. So the transfer function 1 upon s plus a square describes the characteristics of such a pole. So if we equate the denominator to 0, we get two poles at minus a. So there are two poles at minus a. So if there are two poles, that's why it is said as repetitive pole in the left half of the S-plane, how is the response of the system? So the response of the system is this. Since the pole is on the left half of the S-plane, you will get the exponentially decaying term as seen in the previous case, which tells that the system is stable. And the repetitive term includes a multiplying factor t. So the time domain response of the system is t e raised to minus at. Since the poles are in the left half of the S-plane, we still get an output which is stable in nature, wherein the magnitude is finite. Even though the time tends to infinity, we get a finite output. Now, if these repetitive poles shift to origin, if these repetitive poles shift to origin, it means that the nature of the transfer function will be 1 by s square, right? As we move the poles to the origin, the term a becomes 0, right? So the transfer function simply reduces to 1 by s square, equating the denominator to 0. So s square is equal to 0 indicates that there are two poles at the origin, right? So then when there are two poles in the origin, at the origin, the response of the system is f of t is equal to t. There is no more exponential term observed here, right? So there is no exponential term observed when the poles now shift to origin. And plotting the response of such a system, we get a linear output wherein the output is continuously increasing with respect to time. So as time tends to infinity, the magnitude of the signal also tends to infinity. Therefore, we can summarize it here that if the poles are repetitive and if they lie on the origin, if such repetitive poles lie at the origin, the output is unstable in nature, right? Such networks are said to be unstable in nature because as the time increases, the time domain response is observed that in the time domain response, the magnitude of the signal is tending to infinity. Therefore, if there are repetitive poles at origin, the network becomes unstable. Whereas if the repetitive poles lie in the left half of the S-plane, the system is always stable in nature. Moving to case 3. We are now assuming that the poles are real and positive. Now the poles are positive. You could see here the pole is positive. What would be the transfer function of such a system? The transfer function of such a system will be 1 upon s minus a. Equating the denominator to 0, we get the s value to be a. Plotting it, the plot is seen to lie, or the pole is seen to lie in the right half of the S-plane. So if the pole is positive, right, it lies in the left half of the S-plane. Let us find the inverse Laplace transform of this. So moving from S domain to time domain, when we take inverse Laplace transform, we get f of t to be e raised to at. What you see is a positive exponential term, right? When we take inverse Laplace transform of this, we get a positive exponential term. And plotting this time domain response, what we observe is that the exponent, it is an exponentially increasing signal, right? The output is exponentially increasing. Therefore, as the time tends to infinity, the magnitude of the signal also increases to infinity, right? As the time increases to infinity, the magnitude also tends to infinity, and therefore such a output of the system is an unstable system. Because the magnitude tends to infinity, magnitude is uncontrolled. As time increases, magnitude becomes uncontrolled, and therefore such a nature of output is said to be unstable. Therefore, if any pole lies in the right half of the S-plane, the nature of the output of such a network is unstable. The nature of the output is unstable, making the output uncontrollable. Therefore, poles lying on the left half of the S-plane result into an unstable system, and therefore we say that in practice, for a stable system, there should not be a single pole with positive real part. Thus, for stability of the network, no pole should be located in the right half of the S-plane. If you observe any pole in the right half of the S-plane, the output is unstable in nature, wherein the magnitude of the response is tending to infinity or is not controllable. Next case is complex poles on imaginary axis. Now we have poles which are located on the imaginary axis. So here is the case where we have taken two poles which are complex conjugate of each other, and they lie on the imaginary axis. So there are two poles whose real part is 0, and these poles have only imaginary part which are complex conjugate of each other lying on the j omega axis. What would be the transfer function of such a system? The transfer function of such a system will be as shown here, where there will be term s square plus omega square. We know how do we equate this. How do we get the poles? We get the poles by equating this term to 0, right? And then we get two poles here, s square, s as j omega and s as minus j omega. We have seen that how do we get the poles for this is we do a slight arrangement with the terms. We adjust it as s square minus j omega square, and then we equate it to 0. So j square becomes minus 1, resulting into s square plus omega square as seen here. So we have done a small rearrangement so that we can get the factors from it. And then what we do is we have this equation in the form of a square minus b square. So we can get it as s plus a and s plus b. So we get two terms, s plus a and s plus b. So from this we have now two poles. One pole is at j omega and another pole is at minus j omega. So we have now two poles where there is no real part, there is only imaginary part which are complex conjugate of each other. So two poles on the imaginary axis. So what is the effect on the time domain response when we have two poles on the imaginary axis. So when we find the inverse Laplace transform of such a system, we get the response to be having a sine term. We get a sine term there when we find the inverse Laplace transform. Two poles on the imaginary axis is nothing but corresponding to a sine waveform. Right? So output is a sinusoidal output. Thus, purely imaginary complex poles produces purely sinusoidal terms in the time domain response from the pole zero plot. So, if we have two poles on the imaginary axis, it is corresponding to a sinusoidal term in the time domain response. Now let us make small modifications to the imaginary terms which are there on the j omega axis. So let us add a 0 to the system. So we already had two poles on the j omega axis, imaginary axis. Let us add a 0. What is the effect of adding 0 in the time domain response? So the transfer function modifies to s upon s square plus omega square because we need to have a 0, and the 0 is located at the origin, that is the 0 should be at the 0. So to have a 0 we should have an s, because to get the 0 we need to equate the numerator to 0. So equating the numerator to 0 gives us a value s is equal to 0, right? And therefore we get a 0 at the origin. So a 0 at the origin modifies the transfer function to s upon s square plus omega square. And now if we find the inverse Laplace transform of this, we get a cos term. So two poles on the imaginary axis with a 0 at origin corresponds to cosine waveform in the time domain response. I repeat, a 0 with the two poles on the imaginary axis, which are complex conjugate of each other, results in a cosine waveform in the time domain response. Whereas now if we add, if we shift the 0 to some finite location, okay, now you could see here we have shifted that 0 instead of origin to some finite location, right? We have put the 0 to some finite location. So what would be the modification in the transfer function? So to have a 0 at minus a, I should have a term s plus a included in the numerator. If I equate this numerator to 0, I get the s value as minus a. So s is equal to minus a corresponds to 0, which is as shown here. So introducing a 0 at some finite location in the left half of the s-plane modifies the transfer function to the form as shown here, s plus a, s square plus omega square. Now if we find the inverse Laplace transform of such a function, we get the time domain response showing us both cosine as well as sine terms. So if there are the poles on the imaginary axis which are complex conjugate of each other and a 0 at some finite location on the sigma axis, it corresponds to sine and cosine waveform in the time domain. So a close observation of this particular case tells us that with only poles on the j omega axis results in a sine waveform. Poles with a 0 at the origin gives us a time domain response of cosine waveform, whereas poles on the imaginary axis, which are complex conjugate along with a 0 at some finite location, results into sine and cosine waveforms. Moving to the next case, complex poles with negative real part. So again you have complex poles, right? Two poles which are complex conjugate of each other. But where are these poles located now? These poles are located with negative real part. So they have a negative real part. Okay, so they are located in the left half of the S-plane. Okay, they are no more on the j omega axis as we had seen in the previous case. Now these poles are having some negative real part and therefore they lie completely in the left half of the S-plane, right? So what would be the time domain response of such poles which are lying on in the left half of the S-plane, and they are complex conjugate of each other. So as per the previous analysis, complex conjugate poles, right, result in a sine waveform. So we have a sine waveform, and since these poles are located in the left half of the S-plane, indicating the stable region of the system, this sinusoidal waveform is having a nature of curve which is we could say that decreasing in magnitude with respect to time, indicating that their poles are lying on the left half of the S-plane. Right? So what would be the transfer function of such a poles? The transfer function of such a poles is as shown here, s plus a square plus omega square, giving us the poles of the system at minus a plus minus j omega. So there is some negative value attached to the real part, resulting into the poles lying entirely in the left half of the S-plane. So what is the effect of this? We clearly understand that if the poles are in the left half of the S-plane, it is going to result into a stable system. Stable system means the magnitude of the system must have a finite magnitude as the time approaches to infinity. And since it's a complex conjugate pole, we have a sine term involved, and this sine term, as you see, is over a period of time, this sine term is reducing in magnitude, right? And therefore we say that such a system is a stable system. Commenting, each such pair of complex conjugate poles with negative real part produces damped oscillatory time response. So what do we call this output to be? We call this output to be damped oscillatory time response. Right? This is called as a damped oscillatory time response. Right? Because it is in the stable region of the system, and stable region of the system produces a signal which is having finite magnitude, right? And what else? The frequency of such oscillatory term is decided. The frequency of such oscillatory term depends on the imaginary part of the complex conjugate poles producing them, right? So the frequency is decided by these poles. So as these poles move away from the origin, the frequency of the signal changes, right? And now if there is a zero here, now let us say we introduce a zero here at the origin. So this, instead of sine term, we have a cosine term, right? So complex conjugate with a zero, right, will give us, instead of sine term, a cosine waveform, right? And if the zero moves at some finite location, then we can have sine and cosine, both the terms. Moving to the next case, complex poles with positive real part. Now where are these? The poles are complex, so you have complex conjugate poles with positive real part. So now you could see here the poles are in the right half of the S-plane because of the positive real part. So what is the equation, or what is the transfer function of such a pole? The transfer function of such a pole is as shown here, s minus a square plus omega square. So s minus a square gives us a real positive part. It means that the poles lie in the left half of the S-plane, right? These poles are lying in the right half of the S-plane. These poles are lying in the right half of the S-plane, where it is corresponding to unstable region of the network, right? Therefore, what would be the effect of such a poles on the time domain response of the system? So since it's a complex conjugate pole, we have a sine term involved there, right? Complex conjugate poles result into a sine term in the time domain response, along with, since these poles are on the right half of the S plane, we have an exponentially increasing term associated with it, and therefore these two terms together result in a waveform which is in exponentially increasing with respect to time. So you could see here these sine wave is slowly increasing in magnitude with respect to time. So the time response is uncontrolled, right? Because the magnitude tends to infinity as time tends to infinity. Such oscillations are growing oscillations, and therefore, when the poles are in the right half of the S-plane, the output is unstable in nature. Right? When the poles are complex conjugate, you will have sine waveform, but since they are in the right half of the S-plane, these sine waveforms are growing oscillations. They are uncontrolled, and therefore we say that the output of the system is unstable in nature. Next case is repeated pair of poles on the imaginary axis. So there are poles on the imaginary axis, but how are the poles? The poles are repeated in the poles are repetitive poles, double poles. There are two poles at j omega, there are two poles at minus j omega. What would be the transfer function of such a system? The transfer function of such a system will be s square plus omega square square of it, right? Because s square plus omega square will give us single pole at j omega and minus j omega. Square of it will increase one more pole. So double poles at on the j omega axis results in a transfer function as shown here. What is the effect of such a pole zero plot? That is what is the title. What is the effect of such a pole zero plot on the time domain response? So we want to analyze how would be the time domain response of such a plot. So the time domain response of such a plot will be resulting into an unstable system. Why is it unstable? Let us identify the components inside it. So complex conjugate poles involve a sine term, right? Double poles, right? Also includes a t term involved there, right? We get a t term involved because and there is also one pole, one zero located at the origin. So overall the transfer function is shown to be having one zero, and there are two poles resulting into square of the transfer function. So finding the inverse Laplace transform of such a system results into an output time domain response which is having t sine of omega t by 2 omega, right? And this t is nothing but that controls the magnitude of the system, and as this t increases as time increases, making the sinusoidal term a damped oscillatory, right? So we are getting a sinusoidal term which is growing oscillations, right? We are observing here growing oscillations, right? And therefore double poles on the imaginary axis results into an unstable system, right? It results into unstable system. Moving to the next case, single pole at the origin. So if there is a single pole at origin, what is the effect of it on the time domain response? Let us look at the transfer function of such a system. So transfer function of such a system is k by s. And when we take the Laplace transform of inverse Laplace transform of it, we get a constant k. So a single pole results in the term s in the denominator in the Laplace transform. So s equated to 0 gives us a pole at origin. Inverse Laplace transform of it is a constant resulting into a time domain response which is having a step type of time domain response. So you get a step type of time domain response corresponding to a pole at origin. So summarizing all the cases, friends, let us put out all those 8 cases together. What do we understand? That a nature of time domain response f of t can be predicted from the pole zero plot. Once we look at the pole zero plot, we can understand what could be the nature of the time domain response, right? Location of poles in the left half of the S-plane results into a stable system. If the poles are in the right half of the S-plane, it results into unstable system, uncontrolled or unstable system. If there are repetitive poles, complex poles on the imaginary axis, it results into purely oscillatory response. That is, you get the sinusoidal waveforms for for complex poles which are non-repetitive. But repetitive complex poles on the imaginary axis gives you growing oscillation. Then your system is unstable. right? So single poles gives you purely oscillatory response, but double poles on the j omega axis makes your system unstable. A single pole at origin gives you a step type of response, and repetitive poles at origin makes the system unstable. So zeros decide the amplitude of the time domain response, right? So the zeros decide what would be the amplitude of the signal.